doing Hawaiian shirt.
Weird Realities Network presents Blondes, Books, and Campfire Tales, where we pull up a log, roast a marshmallow, and settle in as these two blondes talk spooky tales, urban legends, and classic horror icons. Exciting guests, perky blondes, and sinister tales makes this podcast as good as a double stack s'more. So let's join Bethany and Crystal as they gather around the campfire in Blondes, Books, and Campfire Tales. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Blondes, Books, and Campfire Tales with our special guest today. It is Jonathan Maberry, five-time Bram Stoker Award winner, executive producer, writer, editor. You do it all, pretty much.
Former bouncer, we just learned.
What? I actually wrote it in my notes. I'm like, ask about bouncing stories.
That was fun. Yeah. And I love the intro. You know, I've never had a s'more. So every time I hear the intro, I always think I need to have a s'more at some point.
I know we talked about this last time. We're like, when you come to Tucson next, we got to get you a s'more. But unfortunately, we weren't able to meet up last time.
No, unfortunately.
You will be in Phoenix, though.
Yes, I will be at Phoenix Fan Fusion. That's going to be a whole bunch of fun. I haven't been to that one before, but I have two sisters who live in Phoenix, and so I'm looking forward to going there for some pop culture, immersion. I need that.
Nice. Ricky, are you going to be there?
I've already got the tickets, yeah.
Okay, so Ricky's going to be there. He'll bring you a s'more, or that might be weird. I don't know.
That would be, I think it needs a campfire setting. So at some point, maybe when my grandson, who is not yet born, is old enough, we'll go camping and make s'mores.
There we go. So back to this.
I don't feel like a pre-packaged s'more or a pre-made s'more would be the same.
So back to you being a bouncer. What was that like?
Okay, so in my checkered past, back in the late 70s, early 80s, I had a friend of mine, a woman who was a friend of mine, and her sister was a dancer at a strip club, and she was getting harassed, and the other dancers were getting harassed, and it was turning pretty grim. I mean, there were some physical attacks and so on, and so she asked if I would take a couple of shifts as a bouncer on nights that her sister was working. I said, sure. The money looked good. I did it. And it was a club where the clientele it was right out of a movie. It was bikers and construction workers. And basically every male stereotype asshole you can imagine was there. And it was that kind of a club. And we were fighting. I wound up getting a job there, became the cooler, the head bouncer. And I worked there for 5 years. And we were fighting 4 to 5 times a week, every single week.
So essentially you were in Roadhouse.
Yeah, except that we actually knew how to fight, and whoever choreographed Roadhouse did not know how to fight. Either version of it. And I love both versions of it, but my buddies who were bouncers, and I was also a bodyguard for 5 years, we watch movies like that, like MST3K. Like we sit there and make fun of them. Mm-hmm. The silliest of all of those types of movies, not a bouncer, say, but Kevin Costner in The Bodyguard. Everything he does is wrong. There is not one thing he does that is correct, and he would have gotten his client killed at least 6 times. So we watch that for comedy.
Well, I guess anyone who's in like in an industry and then they see a movie on or a show. What was it? It was on TikTok, and it was people, firefighters watching Fire Country. I think that was the name of it. And they were loving it by how inaccurate it was. Oh yeah. I mean, when
I teach workshops on how to write fight and action scenes, because I'm kind of known for that in my books. And part of the class is myth busting. You know, people believe a lot of this stuff they see in movies and books, and they're convinced that it's the truth. And, you know, the real life I find more interesting, but it isn't necessarily as visually exciting.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, we have another weird kid in our group with Weird Realities. Scott, he's a retired CIA agent. So I always want to watch like a spy movie with him and be like, okay, can you really do that? But he probably couldn't tell me. I don't know.
But does he correct you and call it case manager every time you mention spy?
Probably. I think he just lets me get away with it.
Yeah, I've got a couple of friends from the agency too, and they have corrected my terminology a number of times. Everybody gets real particular about their terminology, and I get it. You know, like I said, I've been a martial artist for 60 some years, and I don't like it when it's done wrong. And I'm the guy that a lot of my writer friends ask about martial arts fight scenes, and I have friends who I ask about other things. We have this kind of a network because everybody really, I mean, all four of us, we're experts on something. Each one of us is an expert on something, and we hate seeing it misrepresented. Doesn't matter what it is, could be how to groom a cat. It doesn't really matter. There are things we know better than the others in our circle, and we hate seeing it done wrong. And it's only, any writer that gets it wrong is being lazy, and that's annoying because you can, I mean, especially in the social media age, you can get an expert to answer your questions in about 15 minutes, and it'll enrich the story. But people still like to lean into cliche.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting because Rachel, she just posted a comment going, dire wolves are no longer extinct. I just felt like sharing, totally not connected to anything anybody was saying. But Rachel, what you didn't realize is we were just talking about dire wolves right when we started.
Right before we started.
Right before we came on. We were definitely talking about dire wolves. I was comparing them to mules because they actually took the gray wolves and the dire wolf DNA and mixed it together. So it's not a true dire wolf. Mm-hmm. But Jonathan was telling us that they're enough gray wolf that, unlike mules, they should be able to breed.
Yeah, and they're technically not a mixed breed like a mule is, because that's actually, I mean, a donkey and a horse had sex to create a mule, whereas this is genetic manipulation at the DNA level, just adding dire wolf genes to the gray wolf genome. I mean, there's part of me that thinks it's really cool, but.
Yeah, I knew that it wasn't like a perfect comparison, but that's just where my mind went to immediately once I heard about how they got to the dire wolves.
A lot of scientists are pop culture nerds, so Game of Thrones had to play into that somehow.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they even named one Khaleesi, if I'm not mistaken.
Romulus, Remus, and Khaleesi.
Okay.
Are the names that I read.
So,
I mean, there's a lot of, pop culture, sci-fi nerds, and literary and science just kind of back and forth. Yeah. We wouldn't have half the stuff without Star Trek.
Oh, no. I mean, the guy I use as my principal scientific advisor, Dr. Ronald Coleman, he's a molecular biologist, stem cell scientist. He's the one that actually is working on bringing the white rhino back from the edge of extinction. But he is also super nerd. And we get together, we do panels on working with experts, and then we just nerd out as pop culture, geeks the whole time. We have a great time. And he also did an unofficial comic called Kevin the Drunk Jedi that was hilarious.
Well, really?
Yep.
That actually sounds kind of fun.
I read that.
And he's now writing a zombie novel that is from the point of view of an actual scientist, which has not been done.
Huh.
Yeah, huh.
Well, I mean, they've had scientists in the movies, but not actually written by a scientist who understands, and who can make the zombie plague credible, because he's really given it way too much thought. Mm-hmm. So should be fun.
That was my issue. The very first published work I had was part of an anthology, and it was your favorite monster versus zombies. And I kind of went with the blob idea. And so I was just researching as much as I could into, slime molds and stuff as my blob. And my version of a zombie was the ant, fungal zombie type thing. And, this was before The Last of Us and all that came out. It was just something I was working on, because to me, a zombie was a non-issue, unless you had magic or something involved. But from a science perspective, everything's going to break down, fall apart. Within a couple of weeks, they're not even going to be viable. So, very much heavy into the science of can I make the zombie work?
It's funny because I had this discussion with George Romero, the guy, for those who don't know who he is, and there's 3 of you left in North America. He co-wrote and directed Night of the Living Dead, the thing that kicked off the zombie plague. And we were friends, and I used to bust on him because his science was non-existent. I mean, the whole idea of a returning space probe having enough radiation to turn everyone in the world into a zombie as soon as they die makes no sense. There's just nothing, no ground at all to work on. And just around the time we were about to be, starting to become friends, we were on panels together. I wrote a novel called Dead of Night, where I worked with parasitologists and virologists around the world to create a plague that actually addresses each of the symptoms, like body decay, because And George Romero approved of it because he said they're not actually dead. They're not alive. They're not dead. They're living dead. It is a third state of existence where some of their metabolism has to be working. They couldn't moan if they weren't breathing. They wouldn't bleed if there wasn't circulation, and they couldn't walk, grab, bite, and swallow if they didn't have some of the motor cortex function. So I worked all that out with these scientists, and George read the book and he said, "Damn, I wish I'd put that in the movie." And it became the basis of our friendship. And then later on, we actually went up doing an anthology together of zombie stories. And a couple of our writers were, in fact, science nerds who really put some odd science into the story. So it was fun. We're now shopping that to Peacock Network, the anthology.
Oh, really nice.
Not George. George is dead, but actually, if you guys ever watch Psych,
Yeah.
all right. So James Roday Rodriguez, the star of Psych, he and I are shopping that to Peacock at the moment.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, I went a totally different route, and I just had a meteor caused mine. So
A meteor has a better chance than a space probe because if it burns up in the atmosphere and there's a virus, there's something in the water. A lot of meteors are made of water.
Mhm.
You could have a dispersal pattern that could infect a large area, and then you'd have the outbreak pattern. So that actually is smarter than the space probe idea, which would have splashed out on the water.
Thank you.
If you ever do a seance and invoke George Romero, you can go na boo boo.
There you go. Maberry says.
Or he may show up as a zombie because I wouldn't put it past him.
Probably.
It's a third state of life.
There we go.
Do you have any connection at all with James Rollins by any chance?
Yeah, it's a good friend of mine.
Okay, well, and he's also going to be there as well.
Cool. Yeah, he's a veterinarian too.
Oh, that's kind of cool. I do like how he does have a lot of science stuff. He was, working with CRISPR and stuff, and a couple of his other works before that. And I like that. And so the fact that you're bringing in a lot more science into this, definitely my bag as well.
Yeah, and Jim is a really good guy. He's a good friend. He's funnier than people expect him to be, though he is incredibly shy. Great writer. His Sigma Force novels are favorites of mine, and he allows me to name check them in my Joe Ledger novels because they're another team that Joe mentions as being active in the world right now.
Oh,
Cool.
nice.
That is cool.
Will there ever be like a crossover thing in
Possible.
the future?
I may have to get Jim a bit drunk to talk him into it, but yeah. I've had crossovers already. I mean, I had Hap and Leonard from Joe Lansdale's books. They were in one of my books, and more recently, F. Paul Wills' Paraman Jack. And he is an old drinking buddy of mine, Paul Wilson. So that was cooked up over cocktails.
Nice.
So now, speaking of Joe Ledger, how is that coming along, or what are you allowed to talk about regarding?
Well, all right. The new book just came out,
Yes.
about a month ago, and it's doing great. It was the number one in a bunch of different categories on Audible, which was great. So really happy with that. And it's the 14th in the series, and I wrote and turned in the 15th already. But as far as what's happening with it, I don't know if you saw the announcement that Chad Stahelski, the director of John Wick, has optioned Joe Ledger for TV.
Yes.
And we are having some wonderful discussions. He is also a pop culture nerd and a martial artist, so we get along great.
Nice.
He has an incredible stunt team. They are the biggest stunt team in Hollywood. His background, just to give you some context, you guys saw the movie The Crow with Brandon Lee, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Brandon was killed on the set accidentally, and they had an actor come in and finish his bits, and they CGI'd Brandon's face over. Well, that's Chad. He was the stunt double for Brandon Lee. Later on, he was a stunt double for Keanu Reeves in the Matrix movies, which is where he met Keanu and Lawrence Fishburne, and then hired them both for the John Wick movies. So, but he's a great guy, and he is a Joe Ledger fan going back years. And it was weird when I first met him because I had a TV show on Netflix a couple of years ago, and right before COVID. And once you've had anything produced, producers often invite you up to LA to sit down, and it's basically a fishing expedition. They want to see if you have anything that they might like, and it's partly a waste of time, and partly it's fun because it's cool. You're going to have to talk to producers, and I'm still a nerd, so that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to his office, the very first thing he said, we're starting to shake hands, and he said, he's holding my hands. I just want to tell you straight up front, I have no interest in making a Joe Ledger movie. And I'm like, okay. He says,
All right.
he says, this needs to go on TV because otherwise we'll lose all the character development. And I'm like, we have a really good conversation. And we did. So we've been talking to actors of various kinds. Actor whose name I can mention that they've talked to is because the talks have been kind of public now. Is we've had a lot of conversations with Gabriel Basso, who stars in a show right now called The Night Agent. And he looks like Joe Ledger. He's 6 foot tall, has blonde hair, blue eyed, and he's an actual martial arts champion. So he's a good one for the role. And that show is based on my buddy Matthew Quirk's books, which are just terrific books. But that show is probably going to wrap after season 3, which they are currently filming. And so he's one of the actors we're talking to. There's a lot of other actors we're talking to. Names that have come up in conversation, pretty active conversation. Christopher Eccleston, one of the characters. Lawrence Fishburne, of course. Dakota Fanning. Bunch of interesting names have been thrown around. And he's having a lot of conversations. Now, right now, he's busy finishing off Henry Cavill's version of Highlander.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's almost done that. But he's also, the phase he's in now is interviewing potential showrunners. For those watching who don't know what a showrunner is, on TV, you have a writer's room, a bunch of writers. One guy's kind of the boss. He sets the tone and creates the vision for how the show will run. And then, they sit around and they bash ideas back and forth. And either the showrunner will write that week's script, or whoever comes up with the most compelling idea, they'll turf it over to him to write the script. But the showrunner runs the thing. And as soon as the press release was out that we're going to be doing the Joe Ledger show, he got 1 million agents saying I represent this showrunner or that showrunner. But Chad has a rule: they have to have read at least the first 3 novels and be conversant with the books, or don't bother wasting his time. Mm-hmm. I like that because we're not looking for someone to just do, because we've had this thing was optioned 3 times before. I mean, the first time was optioned by Michael DeLuca, the huge producer, and took it on behalf of Sony. They took it to ABC, and ABC was developing it with an eye on Jeremy Renner as Joe Ledger, Kate Beckinsale's Grace, and to give you an idea of how long ago this was, Kevin Spacey as Mr. Church. That ship sailed. But it didn't go forward because the president of ABC had to decide between that or the remake of Charlie's Angels, which not only tanked but sunk his career.
Yeah.
And it was optioned 2 other times, and they tried to do movies, but they were pitching either movies or TV shows that were just absurdly expensive, all special effects heavy, leaving the character development behind. And I understand that in film you kind of have to, but I'm a TV guy more than a film guy. So I was real happy when Chad said he wants to do it for TV and he wants to direct the pilot. I'm like, cool, So things are looking, not good, as he knocks on everybody. Things are looking pretty exciting right now, and we're going to be having some more aggressive, one-on-one talks this summer once he's finished with Highlander.
Yeah. So do you still get just as excited when you see something that you created, other people get so excited for, and they want to get into production and get it out there? Do you still just deep down oh my gosh?
Yeah, I'm never not going to be a nerd boy. I mean, I don't care how big I'm a gigantic person and I'm a black belt and all that, but that doesn't care. I'm still a nerd boy. I can talk comics all day long. I can do deep dives into pop culture in a lot of different areas. So yeah, I get really excited because it feels surreal for someone who's been a longtime fan to be inside the house now, inside of his mansion, so to speak. I think the weirdest moment, wasn't even the Netflix show. I think the weirdest moment was the premiere of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, because a lot of that is based on my run. I put Shuri in the armor for the first time. I put her up against Namor. I created the Midnight Angels, and I created the character of Anika. And all of those, were big, elements that the movie was built around. So I got invited to the premiere. Marvel really took care of me for this. And my son went with me because he's really into comics, and my wife is not into comics. We 3rd row at the Dolby Theater with the cast all around us and other creators, and it was surreal. And then at the after party, that was, I think, where it got the strangest, because you expect the cast and the crew to be there, but there are people who just go to after parties. So,
Yeah.
like 1 minute I'm talking to Damon John from Shark Tank, and the next I'm talking to Boy George, and then Jim Gaffigan. It's like, I have never done acid, but I'm pretty sure that's what it would feel like.
Nice.
Yeah, and I remember there's one point where myself and my son and two of the artists I worked with on Black Panther and their daughters, one had come up from Brazil and the other come down from Canada. We're all sitting at a table and we are surrounded by celebrities. We can name almost everyone in the crowd, and we're like, "This is happening. This is actually we're here. They brought us in for this. This is nuts." Our names were in the credits. It was so strange. So I don't think it's ever going to go away.
Yeah.
Another incident that happened. This is one of those things that, first off, you never expect anyone famous to have heard of you, let alone read your work. So I was at Comic Palooza not Comic Palooza, in Pensacon down in Pensacola, Florida. I was in the green room getting some food between panels, and the guy in front of me turns around and with a thick Northern English accent says, "You're Jonathan Maberry," and it's Christopher Eccleston.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm like, how do you know that? My voice goes up like 9 octaves, and he's like, "Because I read." Like, what have you read? So I'm ultrasonic at this point. He starts naming titles of mine he's read and scenes he liked, and I'm like, holy shit. And we went up talking for a while. Then he invited me to lunch. We sat with the cast of E.T. And,
Wow.
there's no part of me that feels that this is normal. It's normal to them because they've been doing it their whole lives and they're on-screen stars. But you never, as a writer, you never think that you're ever going to be famous, and you never really anticipate. I mean, it's not even a thought in your head that celebrities would just recognize you and include you in stuff, just hang out with you because you're another industry pro. It took me a while to realize that I am an industry pro. That's weird, So yes, to answer your question, it is very weird, very strange, and it's not going to go away. And if this is some sort of like if I'm in a coma and I'm dreaming this, and anyone wakes me up, I'm going to fucking kill them.
Let me go back to that coma, please.
Yeah, really, it's a good coma, digging it.
I like the dreams that you're in charge of, because then when you're aware of them, the lucid dreams, because then it's like, aha, I'm making this mine now.
Yeah. And it's funny, the whole celebrity reaction thing happens within celebrity circles too. So I'm friends with my audiobook reader, Ray Porter. He does most of my audiobooks. He's also an actor. He was Dark Side in the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. He's been in Sons of Anarchy, Modern Family, Monk, everything. He's been in everything. And I met him because he's my audiobook reader, and we've become like really close, like family close. And I met Wayne Brady, the actor, through one of my Joe Ledger anthologies. Turns out he was a fan of the books and wanted to write a story for the anthology when I was inviting other people in. And then both of those guys pitched stories to Weird Tales, which I edit, and I published them a couple months ago. As soon as, we do an audiobook version of the magazine as well. So as soon as Wayne heard Ray Porter reading his story, he fangirled like crazy because, Ray Porter narrated the biggest selling audiobook in history, Project Hail Mary. The guy who, Andy Weir's book, the guy who wrote The Martian. That book has sold more copies than any other audiobook in history. And, Wayne is freaking out because he's listened to all the Joe Ledger books too, read by Ray Porter, and here he is. So he's fanboying Ray Porter. Ray is like, this is fucking Wayne Brady, like these are the guys I'm out having beers with. Like, what the actual hell? We're all like fanboying back and forth. It is pretty weird. It's weird, but that's the dimension I'm currently living in, and I'm digging it.
That is cool, though.
Yeah. I don't have a dimension like that I live in at all. So
yeah. Remember, I didn't publish my first novel until I was 48. You got plenty of time.
I was recognized once, and it freaked me out because I used to work in radio, and I did radio in college, and I was in a really small town, and I was shopping and talking to somebody, and somebody came up to me, and they listed all all my radio shifts, and I was like, yes.
That's so cool.
And like,
That's awesome.
so literally just recognized by my voice, and it was, I was just like, okay, cool, bye.
You never know who's watching, listening, reading, whatever,
So
it's great.
was it cool or was it creepy?
No, it was really cool. I just didn't know how to react. And I was like, keep listening, I guess.
Caller number 5.
I'm like, I didn't realize my voice was that distinctive until that point.
You have a distinctive voice. It's pretty distinctive.
Yeah.
I never had anyone recognize like me, but I had someone recognize my book where it was like I was at Comic-Con and they came up. I think Ricky was there with me, and they came up and they're like, Highway of the Dead. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, that's in my Kindle Unlimited list. I'm like, oh my God. Like I freaked out.
That's so cool. That is awesome.
Yeah.
It is weird.
That was my super exciting moment.
When we're getting into this trade, in whatever version of this trade we're getting into, that isn't our goal either. I mean, our goal is to make product that we enjoy writing and we hope people enjoy reading or listening to or whatever. But very few of us think, I can't wait to be famous. It's more like I can't wait for people to read my book. When some kind of fame comes along, it catches most of us off guard, and it will continue to do that. And I think that's okay. The people who accept it as just their due, of course I'm famous, those are the ones whose books I'm probably going to stop reading. Because first off, they're not in it for the fun. And yes, I do this for a living, but I also do it for the fun. This is a fun world to play in. And, I don't do it for the pats on the back. I don't do it for celebrity recognition. But on the other hand, some of that recognition gets you in the door at things. Like I get to go to Comic-Con every year. That doesn't suck. But it is weird. It is weird.
So now I know you said that you didn't start writing till you were 48, right? Published.
I published my first novel at 48. I've been writing. I was writing nonfiction way back starting in college.
You were doing like tech books and stuff, right?
Well, I started out doing magazine features and how-to articles. I went to school to study journalism with every intention of being the intrepid reporter who broke the big story and toppled the corrupt, whatever.
Yep.
I graduated high school not that long after Watergate, so But as I'm going through it, I'm learning good writing habits from journalism. But the whole idea of being a reporter seemed exhausting. So I took a magazine feature class just to kind of break the rhythm, and I fell in love with magazine features. And one of the things they preach, and they do it in a lot of areas of writing, is like write what you know. It's one of the mantras. So I've been doing martial arts since I was 6. So I pitched articles to sort of pitching an article to Black Belt magazine, and got immediately rejected because I had not yet taken the class about how to write a query letter. And if there are like 30 things you can do wrong in a query letter, I got all of them wrong and made up a few new things to get wrong. And I got it back from the editor of Black Belt with, "Are you serious?" in red ink written across it.
Oh, gosh.
He later told me that he thought one of his buddies had deliberately written the world's worst query letter just to mess with him.
Oh, no.
So that was my first mistake. Second mistake is I called him, which you're really not supposed to do. It's like, well, I don't understand what happened here. The article is, it's a good, solid concept. And he said, well, it's a terrible query. And I'm like, what's a query? Because we really hadn't gotten to that point yet. And he's like, all right. So he sent me an example of a query. He said, next time you pitch to some other editor, just copy this form. So I rewrote my query and sent it right back to him. And he's like, he wrote back and said, "You really are a persistent son of a bitch, but I'll take the article." And I went up selling something like 200 articles to him over the years. And I just kept writing articles, did about 1,200 of those, fillers and reviews and a bunch of other stuff. Started writing college textbooks because by then I was teaching at Temple University. After leaving Temple, I became a teacher at Temple. Not in writing, though, oddly. I was hired to teach women's self-defense, martial arts history, and jiu-jitsu, which I taught for 14 years.
Cool.
started writing. I wrote my textbooks. I wrote textbooks for some of my friends who were teachers, who were good teachers but not good writers. They asked me, like, I wrote the bowling textbook. My bowling high score, I think, is 60. So, I'm not good at it, but I can write about it if I get the right information. I wrote the archery textbook. I couldn't throw the bow at the side of a barn and hit, let alone the arrow. But the textbooks would work. And I wrote the judo textbook for a friend who was teaching judo. That was my first published book. Oh, actually.
You got it?
This is my first published book, Judo and You. Great title.
Oh, no.
All the good titles were taken. So what happened is I've been writing mostly martial arts related nonfiction books. And then I had a 4-book contract with a small press in Philadelphia. Did 3 martial arts books. And I wanted to do a book that I felt was going to be more fun for me. I wanted to do a book that my grandmother would like. My grandmother was basically Luna Lovegood as an old lady. She believed in absolutely everything. So I wrote a book called The Vampire Slayer's Field Guide to the Undead, a big, thick book about supernatural folklore, supernatural predators around the world and throughout history. And my publisher said, wait a minute, you want me to publish a book about vampires? So, you're kind of a well-known martial arts guy. And I said, yeah. So he made me publish it under a pen name, Shane MacDougall. Shane being Scottish for John, MacDougall being one of the Scottish clans my family's descended from. The book came out and it outsold my martial arts books collectively 30 to 1. People like vampires more than they like high kicks, apparently, so that's fine. And while researching it, I kept looking for novels that used folkloric versions of monsters, because they're radically different from the monsters we see in movies. Like vampire, there's nowhere in folklore is a vampire afraid of a cross. None of them are ever killed by a stake through the heart. None of them have to be invited in, before they can enter a house. All that was made up by writers or, movie people. And my wife got tired of me complaining about not finding too many of those novels. And she said, well, just write the damn thing. So
Okay.
But 3.5 years writing the damn thing.
Just do it.
That book, when it was done, I thought it was okay enough to maybe try to get an agent. Went up getting an agent pretty quickly. I sent 10 query letters out, got 6 requests for partials and fulls, or fulls, and 4 offers of representation, which surprised the hell out of me and everyone who knew me. Apparently, I didn't have a really good cheering section. All my writer friends said, "You're never going to get an agent on that list," because I picked the 10 top agents in that genre. Audacity sells. And I got an agent who was amazing, and she's been my agent since end of 2004. Sold it to the second publisher who looked at it, and that was my first novel, Ghost Road Blues. Now I'm writing my 53rd.
Now, did you use that query sample that first guy gave you when you pitched it to?
No. I actually figured out, I spent some time figuring out what a query should look like, because it's not a love letter to your book. It is a business letter explaining why this book, this is what it's about, paragraph or 2, and then it goes into why this book would work for the existing demographic that likes these kinds of books. And so I wrote a business letter. And I think my journalism background helped a lot with that, organizing the facts, finding the lead. And the lead is, will this book sell copies for someone? But without saying it will sell copies to someone. Just say it, because you can't make a promise, but you can say this will likely appeal to the readers of, then you give those other books. And it worked out really well. And I actually, on my website, jonathanmaberry.com, there is one of my query letters up there that has since been tweaked by 16 agents and about 11 editors. And it's a free downloadable PDF. If you go to my website, jonathanmaberry.com, free stuff for writers, tons of free stuff people can download if they want it. But one of those queries is there. And
Thanks.
it was off and running. So that's how I became a novelist. I didn't expect to, but now I wish I had started when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
Does it seem that the query letters and the different font formats and such evolve over time?
Yeah, I mean, we don't do paper queries anymore. They still have to be, if they print them out, they still have to print out on a single page, because there are editors and agents who will stop reading if it doesn't print out on a single page, because that's kind of the old standard. They still want it in Times New Roman. They still, there's a bunch of things they still want. So it's a modern version of the classic query, but it's still the classic query. I mean, we mentioned things now like, our involvement in social media and so on. We have to make sure that they're aware that we understand that how important social media is to selling books. But the basic query is pretty simple. It's pretty basic in its structure, and anyone who grabs the query off my website and models their query after it will have a stronger chance of at least getting read, because it is a business letter, and it looks like a business letter. Still has the hooks and all, but it's still a business letter.
So now because we do have a lot of people who tune in, not live, but they watch the show later on. And a lot of people follow a couple of our other podcasts like Write With Me and How to Write and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people that like we're associated with are indie authors as well. Now, if you have people who are kind of not new to the business, but just kind of wanting to get their stuff out there, would you generally lean more towards, in this day and age, with queries and going in the more published route, or would you with like the top 5, or would you look more for like indie?
I'm not an indie guy, like, at all. I have a lot of my buddies are, and a lot of my buddies are hybrid who do a little bit of both. Scott Sigler is a good example. He's a #1 New York Times bestseller with his weird science thrillers, but his Galactic Football League books are self-published. And he does really well on both because he understands that even self-publishing is a business. It's supposed to be your business. So I have no issues with it, but I personally like the traditional route for a couple of reasons. One, it leaves me more time to write. I'm not out of pocket at any point during this. And also, there are more people that are built into it. Like, when I sell a book, not only does my agent give me notes on it, but in-house at whatever publishing house, they have the editor's going to give notes, and there's always a ton of other people. There's the line editor, the proofreader, so on. All those people I don't have to pay for. I don't have to hire. I don't have to hire a book designer. I don't have to go to the bookstores and try to get this. The people who do that, I mean, I admire their industry, but to me, it's time I think they should be writing. So I like to see people try to get at least the traditional route going. Now, not everyone can, and that's a fact of life. And some people do go the indie route, but if they go that route, they should approach it as a business. They should get a good structural editor, a good line editor, a competent proofreader. They should get cover design that is not AI art, because there are a lot of people, myself included, who loathe generative AI with passion, because that's a task an artist is not getting paid for. Mm-hmm. I hate when any creative is not getting paid. And so if you're going to do indie, do it with a respect for the reader, not just to get a book out there with your byline on it, but to do it respecting the reader and giving them something of quality. Your best writing, your best editing, the best design, everything you can, make that book. Then it's just not the path I chose, and traditional has worked really well for me. I mean, my agent has sold 140 products for me over the years, between novels, anthologies, comic book deals, board games, all sorts of stuff. She also helped me with my AA. She helped me get in this agency in the and she's below book up over there to foreign buyers. All of that stuff she can do because she's an expert in that. My film agent is an expert in that. My thing is I'm focusing on being the best writer I can be and producing as much material as possible. And the more time I have, the more I can produce. So it's just not my path.
Last time you were on, you had said that you had, I'm going to put you a little on the spot right now. You said that that writer's block is not a thing. Are you? Right. Yeah. So you were going to tell us, and then we ran out of time. Would you be able to tell us this time?
So, yeah, writer's block is not a thing. Writer's block is like an umbrella that covers dozens and dozens of individual things that may block individual writers. So some people might start with a bang and then run out of steam, and they don't know how to recapture that magic. Some people may have characters that don't feel like they're coming alive, and they can't figure out how to make them that way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole list of things. Any individual writer can't be expected to know everything. I certainly don't. So, years and years ago, I started this thing called the Writers Coffee House, which we have around the country, but I started in Pennsylvania for the purpose of getting writers to talk to other writers, just to hang out and share and network. Is that if one person is blocked, somebody else has a suggestion for how to unblock, and that person may be feeling blocked on a different point, and this person has them, and so on. The community is like a gestalt. It has gravity than its individual parts, which is there, and shareable knowledge. Part of it also engenders generosity within the writers, because if you're not willing to share information with you, we should all. Writing should never be a competitive community. Everyone's behind every. So, sells books, it sells workshops. Writers Digest magazine would sink if put. But it's been a propaganda that's been so heavily pushed that they believe that is the thing. It will argue, become invested in it, but it's not. It's a lot of things. There are solutions for everything. I've never once, and I've been running the Writers Coffee House, God, since 1999 or 8, something like that. A lot of years. I've never once met someone who had a block that could not be solved by a group of writers. Not once in the entire time. So no, writer's block is not a thing. Solutions exist within the community. That's the takeaway.
I'm a big fan of collaborative everything, when it comes down to, because, the hive mind of more individuals and more input is going to have more perspectives, and there's going to be something about that. Years back, you may recall, they had discovered, they put out kind of a game type format where people can just kind of connect things and such and all that. And they solved a lot of molecular issues, because it was just this freeware game that was out there that anybody can just kind of toy with and mess with. And, they were able to just come up with all these just different molecular combinations and whatever to solve certain things, which is really cool.
Yeah. And so I've been involved in think tanks over the years. A lot of writers are in think tanks. Funny, they make jokes about shows like Castle and so on, but there are actually think tanks. Usually governments funded. They closed a lot of them recently, but for years these things have been. My buddy Brian, think, I've been involved in some with come up threats, problem, and work through them to create evolutions. They then bring in terrorism teams to run the scenarios, so that their response protocols now. So there's always a response ready if a crisis happens. There's a lot of think tanks. DARPA is, started off as a think tank, the Defense Advanced Research Projects. They've invented everything from Velcro to, well, pretty much everything. The internet, they invented the internet by basically a bunch of science geeks sitting around talking. Wouldn't this be cool if? And somebody else saying, yeah, but that won't work, and somebody else says it might work if you try this, and you have that same. It's right, because it tends to all function for its goal. Where community mind tends to want every member of the community for the community as a whole thrives, and the writers' community tends to be that way.
I just want to let you know real quick, Jonathan, I'm getting some messages that your mic and your camera is kind of pinging a bit.
A lot of lag.
Yeah, a lot of lag going on.
That's weird.
Right now, currently, you're good.
Everything looks normal to me when I'm watching it.
The more excited you get, the less computing power is allowed. Unfortunately.
Although currently, right now,
like you're way too excited. We got to calm this down.
Calm it down.
So we didn't get most of what you said in the last 2-3 minutes there.
You didn't.
No.
Well, I think the last thing I said was that individually we don't have all the answers. Collectively, we do. That's that's basically that. And these think tanks, exist. They work really well. Most writers, like if you go to almost any writers convention, the writers will usually gather at the bar. We call it BarCon, and that's when we all talk shop. I had so many deals made at Dragon Con, at San Diego Comic Con, at New York Comic Con. We all gathering at the bars and just talk shop. And, somebody says, what's been pissing me off? I can't figure this out. And somebody goes, oh, I got that. And, that's how we work. It's just so much fun to do it that way.
Yeah.
I do that with my job, not at the bar, but just,
I think insurance. So you probably shouldn't be at the bar.
I just can't get these guys to buy my insurance.
I don't sell insurance, but
Crystal goes out and she does all the investigation. She's like climbing in through crawl spaces and climbing. What, you went to like an abandoned building, it looked like the other day from the photo she sent me. Actually, it was a really cool setup for a horror movie.
It looked abandoned. There's a guy that lives there, but I was really questioning if I was in the right spot today. I was like, I'm just going to snap a picture just in case I disappear in this house forever. It was like the house from House of Leaves. So I wasn't sure I was going to come back out.
Yeah, hopefully you're the protagonist of a thriller, not the victim that sets the tone for the thriller.
Not the 10-minute intro to get people into it.
10-minute intro.
No, but I do think, like, I know that we're talking about it in like the realm of writing, but I just think like that's life though too. Yeah. Like there's so much stuff in life. It's just like, I can't figure this out. And I'll like call Bethany and she'll be like, oh, just do this. And I'm like, oh, yeah, duh.
Well, it goes the same way. We all call each other for stuff.
And we writers do the same. I mean, that's the thing is networking drives everything. It's fantastic. The whole idea of a writer sitting alone in a cabin, knocking out a novel, and then it becoming a bestseller is so comically not true, unless you're already famous. But even then, social media has changed the math. Writers aren't allowed to be that isolated guy in the cabin. You've got to be part of a community. And the extension of that, the second part of it, is becoming a community with the people who read your stuff, because they aren't there just to plunk down a credit card and get a book. They are people that you're having a conversation with via your book. And if they're interested in the book, that means that you share a lot of interest, because you wouldn't have written the book if that wasn't of interest to you. So I love the community out there. I made so many friends online. I mean, look at what we're doing here. This wouldn't have happened 20 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
And here we are solving the problems of the world, the four of us.
Yep. We're gonna bring back that white right now.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking of breaking into some buildings and claiming to be an insurance investigator.
There we go.
I thought I was supposed to be here. Are you sure you didn't just have a fire here?
I'm not even sure that's your real house. That could be something you broke into for this thing. We have no clue.
I mean, that would be a good cover, though. I always joke when I was delivering pizza. I was like, man, you could just say you're a pizza driver. You can get in anywhere. Like, they gave me access everywhere. But, like, insurance adjuster, too, would be another one. Like, I'm just here for insurance,
Well, I mean, how many serial killers pretend to be gas meter readers or what, someone that.
Oh, yeah.
And I have something that I've been discussing with my agent about a straight mystery thriller called Con Man, about a guy who he has no home. He just goes from one kind of a convention to another all year round. Doesn't matter what kind of convention, but he's only at the cons, and he kills someone at each con. He's always looking for prey. And we both figured there's probably people like that out there. I've probably had drinks with them at BarCon, come to think of it.
I definitely had the thought, not of like breaking laws by being an insurance investigator, but I'm like, what if somebody just keeps getting policies from different companies and is like, I had a loss. I'm like, what if they just keep killing a bunch of insurance people? But like, obviously, like my manager knows where I am usually. There's documentation to show where I went.
God, that just gave me an idea for a story. Honestly.
Make sure to credit me in the acknowledgments.
I will. I'll name a character. An insurance salesman who goes to people and says, "Look, we can turn you into vampires. You'll live forever, but you got to split your life insurance policy with you when you die.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
they set up these enormous policies, kill the people, they resurrect as vampires. Now they can live comfortably with that money.
There you
I
go.
would like to say officially I'm against insurance fraud, but I like that story.
Well, to say the story is only as real as the vampires, so
Exactly.
and I'm moderately sure there are no vampires, So
Years ago, they had a movie called The Darwin Awards, and the premise was kind of similar to that. You had an insurance claims adjuster or person who went out to check out all these outlandish insurance claims, and where people were just offing themselves in the most Darwinistic manner possible. And he had to prove that this was actually a thing, or if it was just somebody pulling one over on the insurance. So
see, I see now a whole insurance anthology. Stories.
All inspired by Crystal there.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, if you ever need any advice on how it actually works, you can reach out.
Actually, I might, because that's now that I've thought of that story, I've got like 20 anthology invitations. I might write it for one of those.
Thanks.
Well, Crystal, Stacy has a question for you. She wants to know if you have to show your insurance ID when you have to go to a show.
Nobody's ever asked me for my ID, actually.
And then Rachel says a real estate agent secretly looking for vampires.
I like it.
That's an investment. That would be an investment.
I mean, I do usually have my ID. I have my business cards, and I usually wear my polo with the company's name on it, because then I don't have to think about what I'm wearing, and it looks, it's pretty official.
Yeah, but one color copier and fake ID away from just
showing any ID you want.
And silkscreen for the shirt, for the uniform.
Yeah, silkscreen.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's ever. I think no. One person asked for my ID once. One person, just this little old lady that lived by herself. So she knew what was up. She's like, I'm not letting just any random person into my house.
I'm just hoping there are no cops in the audience thinking, well, this is a conspiracy to commit.
No. The only cop we know is Vic Ferrari, and he'd probably be on our side with this. So.
I mean, he used to work with the SIU units and with insurance companies. So
there you go.
Yeah.
And seriously, which writer is not on some sort of watch list?
Exactly.
My scientist buddy, he and I are pretty sure we are, because we'll have conversations like when I was doing one book, I said, I need to figure a way to make rabies more easily communicable, because it's a very hard disease to share. You got to get bitten and all that. And I said, could we do it with pertussis, with whooping cough? Not only did he say yes, he gave me exactly how to do it.
Oh gosh.
Which we did not put in the book, by the way. You don't actually know what it is. But we have come up with so many world-ending plagues that are scientifically plausible. So yeah, we're on watch list for sure.
Oh yeah.
I feel like answering the phone. God bless America. Hello.
Exactly.
I swear I'm not trying to actually kill people, just on paper.
One of the plots I came up with in one of the think tanks was leased by the government from me, and it's your tax dollars paying for that. Thank you, because they couldn't beat it.
Wow.
Best case scenario was a 40% kill of the U.S. population. That was the best case scenario, and I had to sign a big stack of papers that are terrifying to me and to my lawyer, but paid for my son's college. So,
well, there you go. That's all that matters in the end, because college is expensive. I'm still paying off my college. I'm not sure it's ever going to be paid off.
Well, the thing about world-ending ideas for writers, it would kill our readership, so we probably won't become a mastermind to destroy the world.
Yeah.
If you kill 40% of the people, the other 60% are going to be so busy trying to survive, they're not going to have time to read.
Yeah, so I don't want to hurt my own industry, so I probably won't become a mass murderer, but if the writing thing doesn't work out, I've got plan B sitting there. So
years back, World of Warcraft had had introduced this. Well, it was it was a bug, and in the system, you would go to this particular raid. There was a mechanic that would basically, cause this sort of basically it was like a zombie type effect, and you couldn't. It wouldn't go outside that dungeon that you were in. Mm-hmm. Well, they found out that the pets that the hunters would be able to summon and stuff could get infected with this, and then they can just put them away and then pop them back out later on in the real world, and they're infected with this, and now they can infect others. And this plague spread like wildfire, and people were incubating it. They would patch it out, they'd reset the servers, but people had logged off before then. They'd come back, reinfect people, and it was used I think the CDC actually studied it at one point as this is a viable thing, holy crud, So, and that was from World of Warcraft.
Nice. Yeah, the CDC tapped a bunch of us for information years ago. They wanted to explain how to deal with virus outbreaks long before COVID. And since people were not reading the CDC emails, they decided to do it with zombies, just as an entertaining way of telling a story. Mm-hmm. And they tapped a whole bunch of us for information. It crashed their server like 30 times. Everybody wanted it. And the FEMA guys who were going out after Katrina and just talking about how to survive things, they couldn't fill a room unless they were talking about zombies. They just put it in the context of zombies, and then everyone in town came. So it's a very weird thing, but it actually allowed the information to come out, and a useful information to come out. So
I heard about that. Like, I've definitely heard about that. Like, it's like the zombie survival guide, but it's actually how to survive an emergency. Yep. There's like a whole pamphlet and everything. Like, I've seen it. Yep. That's so cool that you were part of that.
Yeah. That's not that big a thing for me because they tapped everyone who was writing about zombies at the time.
Oh, okay.
They started with Max Brooks, who wrote Zombie Survival Guide, and Roger Ma, who did Zombie Combat Manual, and a bunch of guys, Brian Keene and I, and I think Isaac Marion might have been part of that too. There's a whole bunch that were tapped for that. It was fun. It was like, we didn't get paid or anything. It was just, it was so much fun. We'd have paid to be a part of it because it was, mm-hmm. It's like, this is a hoot, and it's going to be read by 300 million people,
Well, we can all rest assured because Rachel just said that she knows someone who actually talked to an FBI agent and actually said that the agent said they can tell the difference between a normal writer and a serial killer. So, we're good, guys. We're good.
Yeah.
So everybody's individual FBI agent isn't necessarily automatically assuming that you're a serial killer just because you're being like, how do I hide a murder?
It's funny with FBI agents. Some years ago, I was doing a book called Predator One, and it dealt with GPS hacking. And part of the thing was how to hack drones. And in San Diego here, they have a company called General Atomics, which builds the drones for the military. So I applied I wanted to do an interview with some of the people there and do a tour of the factory. They had to do an FBI screening for me. So I actually sat in a room with two very unsmiling FBI guys. And they must go to theater school because they didn't crack a smile at all. And, I wound up getting the tour and so on, wrote the book. About, 9 months later, I get an email from one of these guys, one of the FBI guys. I'm thinking, oh, crap. And it turns out, he says, oh, can I buy you lunch? I'm writing a novel, and I want to know if you could just give me some advice. We went out to lunch. He was the funniest guy I ever met. It's hard to believe it's the same guy, he's there. No expression, but at lunch he's freaking hilarious.
Wonder if they had a bet going in. All right, let's see. He's going to probably try to crack us up. We cannot.
Yeah, I'm known for sarcastic humor, and I was cracking some jokes and nothing. It was a tough room.
That's why I work for insurance and not the FBI, because I could never keep a straight face for that.
Well, Jonathan, it's been great having you on. We are reaching our hour right now, so we'll probably
kind of cut off. Geez.
I know. Well, we always have a blast when you're on. So
you guys are fun. We'd have fun at a BarCon together. I'm very sure about that.
Well,
I
thank you
agree.
thank you for coming on. We're all excited to hear about, if we can see any more of the Joe Ledger coming about, as well as your zombie stuff you're talking about with the Peacock. So I think that's going to be super exciting. And yeah, hopefully we'll have you back here for season 4. So
I would be delighted. You guys are the most fun I can have in 1 hour. I mean, you guys are doing.
we'll have to pack it in there.
I feel like that's really high praise.
No. I do a lot of podcasts, and there are some that you have to kind of force yourself to smile, and there's some you feel at home in the first 2 seconds. And this group is definitely one that I always feel at home with and always have a good time with. So yay!
Oh, that's awesome.
Thank you. We
Thank you so
definitely enjoy having you here.
I'm trying.
I know we're all like, thank you.
We're all pop culture nerds together.
We are.
Very true. Very true.
Well, thank you for coming on, and we'll definitely try to get you back here for season 4. And good luck with everything going on, and congratulations so far with everything that's been happening.
Thanks.
Yes,
And
I'm very excited to see what else is coming.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know yet, but it should be fun. But and stay in touch, guys.
Absolutely, we will. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in
Take care.
for Blonde Books and Campfire Tales. We will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.